Well, welcome to On the Couch for another session today. I'm joined by one of my life heroes, Scott Sanga Samways, in his place at Newcastle. Firstly, thanks for having us in your home.
Lotty, how good to have you on the couch. Hey, that's it.
So good. We've called this session Couch Time a couple of times, but we thought, we might have to rename that. It's anyway. We'll
Couch potatoes.
Yes. Just two, as I said, just two blokes sitting on the couch having a conversation.
Yes.
No worries.
Oh.
Hey, great word today. Thank you so much for everything you brought out. We'll get to that in a second. Before we do, saying one of the reasons why you're so many people's heroes is because of the stories that you tell. I want to ask you to just give us a little. Tell me the story again about that combi. I think it was a combi that wouldn't start, and you had to call the NRMA so many times that they eventually blacklisted you.
Yeah, well, I used to have a combi, 1976, Volkswagen pop top, orange, and I used to drive it all the time, and it would break down. And then I get this letter in the mail. It's from the NRMA, and
because you had roadside assistance.
Roadside assistance. And I get a letter from the NRMA saying that I have overused the NRMA's roadside assistance, which I didn't think you could do that. I didn't know you could do that. And so I sort of kept it as a trophy because I thought, I don't think many people in Australia have got the letter saying they've overused roadside assistance. And then they listed all of the things that they think I should do, either replace the car, get it serviced, get it mechanically checked, I can bring it into NRMA. They had all of these things, but basically because I was first names with Ted, the NRMA guy that used to come over all the time, so I think maybe he put in a complaint. I don't know.
So good.
There you go.
Oh, so good. All right, let's talk about this word today. You spoke about the famous woman that Jesus actually said because of this act, she's going to be known everywhere the gospel's preached. It's it's incredible. You said something interesting. You said she was uninvited, but she wasn't unknown.
Yeah.
In fact, she was really known, wasn't she? She was notoriously known.
Yes.
What do you think it is that? And then you went on to talk about her boldness. Yeah. What do you think it is about some of the things in our lives that, we kind of know are in there and maybe we wish weren't and we feel guilty about certain things? Do you think that often stops people from really getting into a space in front of Jesus?
Yeah, I think when it comes to everyone individually, I'd say we have a number of different areas that we know about our life. So there's the arena part of my life.
Yeah.
That's the area that I know about me, and that's the area that you know about me.
Yeah.
Then there is the mask side of our lives, and that's the area that I know about me, but you don't know about me.
Yeah.
Then there would be the blind spot in our lives, and that's the area that I don't know about me, but maybe you do know about me. You ever seen something in someone that they can't see it in themselves? It's a blind spot. But then there's this other area that's in our lives. And it's the other area that sometimes we forget, and that's the area called potential, because that's the area that God sees. And I think so often we're so consumed with the mask area of our lives of what we're trying to hide, or maybe the blind spot of what we don't know people know about us, rather than see that there's God looking at what he sees in us, which is the potential that he wants to draw out of us.
Amazing.
And that's what I think Mary saw, that she was bold because, like in the message, she knew, how much love she had for him, and she trusted him. Yeah. Faith trusted in it's easy to put faith in someone that you love.
Yeah, you said that. Right.
And so I think that's why it produced this boldness, because in that, like I said, there was hostility in the environment. You've got a Pharisee, and then you've got this incredible sinful woman who those two people never want to be seen together in public.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah.
And so it creates this hostility, but yet Mary just breaks all of that and just says, no, I'm coming before Jesus with this boldness.
Yeah.
And I often think in our lives, we've got to learn to do that. We've got to learn to go, regardless of sin in my life, regardless of the mask areas in my life, regardless of the blind spot and mistakes, I'm going to keep coming before Jesus. We've got to keep doing that.
So good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Pharisee there.
Yeah.
Simon. There's a little bit of Simon in all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. More in you than me. Just keep
Thanks
that between
for
us.
pointing that out.
Yeah.
So in that, Simon represents that, I guess, person who believes they've got things right.
Yeah.
And clearly sees that this woman hasn't.
Yeah.
and yet her approach or her intimacy in the end with Jesus, with God, is so much more closer than his. What do you think it is about prideness, judgment? What do you think it is that keeps you away from God? So she had all this trouble, yet she was close. Simon, he might have had things all prim and proper, but he was distant from God.
Yeah.
What do you think that is that we wrestle with there at times?
I think, sometimes we say that it's, that it's put it this way. We're so much better blaming than we are building.
Good.
We're better at blaming something in our lives for something rather than building our lives. And I think too often we put focus on what's stopping us from getting to God and using that as an obstacle, or blaming that as the obstacle, when most times I find it's just something inside of us that maybe we've got to swallow that pride and just go, you know what? I've got to put that aside if I'm going to get to God. Put it this way, I think the devil gets blamed for too much stuff in this world.
Okay.
I just don't think he's the one that's really the one that's responsible for a lot of the stuff. I think sometimes it's our own consequences from our own decisions, our own choices that we make that have put things in our lives that maybe we need to go, I can remove that.
Yeah.
I need to deal with that. That
So
is something that is self-orientated, not Satan-orientated. That is me needing to die to myself, to die to that sinful nature, so to speak,
Yes.
Because she was a sinful woman.
Yeah.
Everything about that moment for her coming before Jesus was dying to herself. Everything in that moment was.
Yeah, so that was a super moment of super humility,
Yeah.
obviously. So you're saying there it's often easier to go, oh, that must be the work of the devil, as opposed to, actually, I can make some decisions here.
It's easier to blame than it is to build.
Yeah, great.
That's
great thought. Okay, you said a couple of cracker lines in there. I'm referring to my notes because I just jotted down some of your one-liners.
Yeah, you can have them if you want.
I'll use them.
Yep.
I generally do,
yours.
Sang.
They're
I
yours.
generally do. Actually, before we get there, you said this beautiful line. I love this. You said, brokenness gives its best to God. You actually talked about that a little bit. You really brought out that brokenness is something beautiful before God.
Yeah.
And you went into some of your personal story there. And that I actually think that's going to really impact the hearts of the people that are going to view that preach. Can you just talk about that a little bit more, that brokenness before God and how he sees it? Because I think we often try and protect our brokenness because we don't want that.
Absolutely.
It reveals things about us that we wish weren't there.
Well, it's like I said, when something's broken, it loses its value. And that's what we do to human nature. We think when something's broken, well, they've lost their value, they've lost their worth. And we actually do it to ourselves sometimes as well, because we can go, well, I come from this background. I came out of this environment. I was trapped in this abuse, in this loneliness, in this depression, in this drug addiction, in this relationship, or whatever it was that was broken. And we can somehow form our identity out of our brokenness.
Yes.
But that's exactly what we're not meant to do, because brokenness happens, but the brokenness becomes beautiful when it's brought. Because that the Bible says that when the container was broken, that the fragrance filled the room. I love that says it filled the room, and it's almost like what you get when you see in the Old Testament when they burn incense before the Lord, and it would fill the room, and it was an offering that was brought before God. And sometimes it's what we bring before God, because brokenness often gets you to a place of vulnerability towards God, where sometimes, like I said, how God has to break that sinful nature in our lives. Like maybe it's breaking of pride, it's breaking of self-value, of sometimes the things that we put our trust in to get us through, and God needs to break that from us and go, no, your trust needs to be in me. And so I think brokenness puts you into a place where all you've got is to trust in God. And the beautiful thing about that is that everyone's broken. I don't know anyone who's got it all together.
That's great.
I don't know anyone who sits back and goes, yeah, well, I'm fine. That doesn't apply to me. Yes, it does. The Bible says all have sinned. All have fallen short. In other words, we've all broken.
Yeah.
We're all broken on the inside. And the beautiful thing is it's God that is the restorer. He's the rebuilder. He's the renewer. He's the refiner. He's the one that brings us back and makes us whole again.
Yes, right.
That's what he does. Through Christ, we get to be made whole. And that's what I love about it, because people think, it's not about being perfect. You hear people say, oh, you're trying to be a Christian. Oh, and they try and the moment you stuff up being a Christian, they point the finger at you. Thought you were a Christian, they say. I used to get it. I'm sure everyone gets that from a workplace or a family member or a friend. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were a Christian. You're doing that, are you? I thought you were a Christian. But here's the thing. You got to, when you understand, hey, we're all broken. Yeah. We've all messed up. It's not being a Christian doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means you worship a perfect God.
It's a great thing.
So yeah.
Bring your brokenness. Yeah. I love it. Okay, how do you go? You said this line, I love this one. It's much easier to be challenged than it is to be changed.
Yes.
You mightn't have worded exactly like that, but you use those two words of challenge and change. And God will often challenge us. I think you were really making the point, but then we can take his path that leads to the change.
Yes.
Can you speak into that a bit more? Because you actually referred to your own experience in there of going, I was really challenged in that moment, but then the change came through a process.
Yeah. And that's what I really realised that for me was almost like a learning curve in the things of God, because that night it did challenge me. And I had a Holy Spirit encounter. And I'm sure you can look back in all of our lives and go, yeah, that's where I had an encounter with God. Yeah. Might have been on a summer camp for a young person, might have been in a church service for someone else, might have been that point of salvation or being filled with the Holy Spirit, or when someone prophesied or a message resounded within you and you go, God spoke to me there. Yeah. Well, that's where the challenge happens. It's where God has an encounter. But the change doesn't necessarily happen there. Because I've seen good people get challenged and have moments with God, but then go away and live unchanged. And so that's where the process is in the change. The change is in the process. Yeah. And so for me, that's when I needed to go, well, I do need to go and pick up my Bible. And I do need to read it, even though it doesn't make sense right now, even though I don't feel like it's speaking to me right now. And then I'd go and pray, and even though I didn't have the words to pray, or I'd worship, even when I didn't want to worship, I was putting change out of the challenge. And it was through that I got to a point where that breakthrough did happen. And I've seen that time and time again where, you can be, as a married couple, God challenges you. Well, if you don't change anything in your marriage, nothing's going to get better. Yeah. God's challenging you so you can now outwork the change to see the process of breakthrough happen in that area of your life. And so that was sort of that moment of what I was illustrating there,
Yeah, so good. Okay, how can you encourage someone? You have so much.
You're great, Lotty.
Thank you, Sanga.
That's how I encourage someone.
I feel that encouragement. How do you encourage someone more specifically to worship when they're in that place of hardship? Because it's not, for many, it's not the instinctive response.
Yeah, true.
It's the instinctive response is all of those other things that are easier that you mentioned before. It's easier to blame, or it's easier this. Help us there.
Here's the thing. I just don't think sometimes we understand what worship is.
Okay.
Sometimes we place value in worship in the value of 20 minutes on a Sunday service. Or we place value on worship as 4 songs that we sing, 2 praise, 2 worship, or something like that. Yes. We don't gather what real worship is. And I think Romans chapter 12 talks about worship is your life sacrificially living for Christ in everything. This is our spiritual act of worship. And I think when you understand what worship does, like worship magnifies Jesus. Worship brings you into an environment where perspective change, mindsets can change, your desires change, simply being in that place with God, because you're in the place where you're magnifying him and you're worshiping him. Lifting your hands in worship. Moses in the Bible with Aaron. Remember when Aaron and them got round, they lifted up his hands, and when the hands went up, the Bible says that Israel were winning the fight, but when the hands went down, they were losing the fight. So Aaron and then they got round her and they lifted up Moses' hands, and while his hands were raised to God, there was a battle that was being won. Worship in the spirit realm is in the same. When you lift your hands, they're in the spirit realm, you're taking ground. You might not know it, but the spirit realm, you're taking ground in worship. And so there's all of these things that I think sometimes we don't realize. Strength comes out of the place of worship. When Keddy was in the hospital with Zach, right? So she was in bed rest for 3 months. I only summarised the story, but she was in there for 3 months beforehand, 3 months after, living in the hospital. So for 6 months, I'm living at home with the kids, but life still has to go on. And so I'm taking kids to school, I'm going to work, then we're dropping off, we're getting to the hospital every day to visit Ketty and Zach. And then I remember coming home one night, it was about 11:30 at night. Jaya and Taj were both asleep in the back, and I was just done. I was spent. I was like, we've been doing this now for months, driving back and forward from this hospital. I'm just looking after the kids. Ketty's at the hospital. And I remember I sat in the car and I just couldn't get the effort to open the door and go in the house. I couldn't even lift the kids. And I sat there and I turned on one of our worship albums, and the song came on, and this song started to sing, I will fix my eyes on you and I will see this season through. And I just remember hearing those words, and I must have played that song on repeat about 9 times that night. But can I tell you, in that moment, I just started to worship God in my car, and the presence of God came, because worship brings his presence. And in that presence, out of that, a strength came, a courage came, hope came. You know, this peace came, and all of a sudden I got out the car and I felt like my strength was renewed. I felt like I had this passion, and I can't explain it, but worship put me there because I chose to worship. And so I think you got to understand, worship is a choice. Worship is a choice. You can sit in church and the songs can be playing, and you still you still might not be worshiping, because you've got to choose to enter in. The Bible says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and praise. And so you got to choose to worship to go into that place. You know, the Bible says, give thanks in all circumstances, not just the good times, in the hard times as well. How do you give thanks? I'll tell you how. By worship. Because worship puts you in that place where everything changes, where you put your eyes on him.
So good, Sam.
Yeah.
So good. All right. Last question.
Yes.
You brought the message to this pinnacle point where you said Jesus is the fragrance.
Yes.
Mary wasn't fragrance, Simon wasn't. Jesus is the fragrance.
Yeah.
Jesus is alive in us. Is that where we take this? Is that because the Bible talks about us being a fragrance then, and it's not because of anything we know that we carry besides Jesus? Is that what that's supposed to look like in our day-to-day lives? Yeah,
I think the crescendo and the crux of that message was it's Christ in us. It's living a Christ life. It's Paul said, I die daily. And he said, I mean that. He said, I die daily. What's he talking about? He's not talking about dying naturally. He's talking about his flesh. He's talking about his sinful nature, dying and saying, I want to live for Christ. The Bible says, I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. John the Baptist, he prayed. He said, I pray that I might decrease and that he might increase. I was just reading in my devotion yesterday, and it talked about someone asked Jesus, when's the kingdom realm coming? And he said, the kingdom realm is within you. And he said, and it is expanding daily. And I asked myself the question, well, is the kingdom of God expanding in my life? Am I allowing God's kingdom to expand in me, or is it retracting in me? Because often it's the dog that you feed the most. You ever heard that's the dog you feed the most that wins? Well, you think about that when it comes to your spirit man and your carnal nature, your sinful nature and your spirit nature. The dog you feed the most is the dog that wins, is the dog that grows strong. You feed your carnal nature, that's the dog that grows strong. You feed your spirit nature, that's the part that grows strong in your life. And I think that's what the essence of that message is the closer you get to Christ, the closer you get to God, the stronger you're going to live for him, Yeah.
So good. Fantastic. Well, that raced for me. I've got no idea how long we chatted for.
Probably broke the boundaries.
Probably beyond the allotted time, but I know that that's going to really be so beneficial to so many people. So thank you for spending some time on the couch with us at Lifehouse today. We appreciate your word, and we just love you singing. And
I love this guy.
And here he is.
God, I love
Just a bit of good man social distancing for the boys.
Yeah, that's it.
Just a couple of boys.
That's it. Just
on a couch together.
Having a good time.
Yeah.
Just keeping it real.
See you next week.